Hello Greggles and welcome back. Now for today's video, I thought I would do something really special, and that is letting you see me make my first cosplay step by step, and you can see the whole process from design to the finished piece. But how did I get into cosplay? Me and my friend Hannah, the Wheezing Weasley, took a trip to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter last year and met up with our friends Haley and Michael. You know them as Hobbit Party and the Wizard Tailor, and they actually go to a lot of Comic-Cons and conventions in America where cosplay is a huge part. There's contests, you can do it for fun, but they absolutely love it. And of course, going to the Wizarding World, we decided we had to dress up. We each did a bound of a different drink or sweet from within the Wizarding World, because I didn't know what bounding was. I decided to go as the Bertie Bott's Beans guy, Hannah as a chocolate frog witch, Haley decided to go as a pumpkin juice witch, and Michael was a butterbeer wizard. And it was a really fun sort of project. Me and Hannah had no experience, and from there it's just progressed into a real hobby. I enjoy the whole process of designing, making, and putting the costume together, and even getting the photos right at the end. And I thought it would be really interesting if I could show you each step of the process and hopefully inspire you to make your own cosplays. Now, what am I going to be designing this time? Recently I've been really interested in the different shops within the Wizarding World, and when I'm trying to come up with a costume, I always think of how I could incorporate parts of the film actually into a costume. I actually prefer to sort of make up my own ideas, like when I did a Weasley punk, which took all the colours of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes and put a punk spin on it. For this one, I thought a Diagon Alley shop would be perfect, and coming up with a costume for someone who would work within that shop. Can you guess which shop I have chosen? I have chosen Wiseacres. It's blue with these six-sided stars all over the ceiling. There's lots of astronomy telescopes and globes. It is a stunning shop, but I really like the aesthetic, so I thought that would translate quite well into what I'm going to call wizard wear. I'm going to try and take you step by step through the whole process, but if there are any other questions, drop me a comment below and I will try and get back to you, or send me a message on Instagram at Thegregwholived. Step one with any project for me is a lot of research. I want to research the aesthetic and details of the thing that I'm sort of incorporating into a costume. I want to research things from the time period or a certain part or garment that I want to make. And thirdly, it's just sort of bringing it all together and actually putting pen to paper and designing something. So this is what I came up with. So I absolutely love the design. I'm planning on going with this blue and gold theme throughout. And I wanted to make another waistcoat. I made one recently, but the pattern that I got, which I'm going to show you, came with two different types of waistcoat, and this is going to be the second one, which I'm going to amend and hopefully make it a bit more wizardy with the stars covering everything. Once I decide exactly what my design is going to look like, I will buy materials in. Unfortunately, with coronavirus, a lot of shops are shut at the moment, so what I've actually been trying to do is use up all the fabric that I already have, recycling sort of odds and ends, and hopefully coming up with something completely brand new. And the pattern that I'm going to be using to make all of this is Butterick B6339, which is this pattern, and it comes with all these different designs but uses sort of the same core pattern. It's very straightforward. I found it very easy the first time that I made it, but one thing I would say is make sure you get the right size. So once you've got your pattern pieces and you know what you want to make, it's time to cut out your pattern, which can be time consuming, but it's always good to put a pot of film on in the background and just keep going. Make sure you also cut the pieces out to the right size. Pieces should cut out like this. And on this design, I was a 38. So you just cut around all the outlines for 38. I always recommend the first time you're trying to do a pattern to actually do it in calico or a cheaper fabric if possible. This is calico. It's incredibly cheap because it's just a standard fabric, but it paints really well, it dyes really well, it's easy to iron, easy to stick, and very easy to sew. I think this is £4 a metre from the website I get it from, and it's really good because you can just pull it apart if anything goes wrong, and it's always good to use practice fabric before the more expensive fabric of your final piece. As I've already made this one before, I won't be doing this, but I will be using the calico to cut out some individual parts, as I want to change the front here to make it much more wizzly. These are the 3 different fabrics that I'm going to be using, and I've got this one, which is a light cotton. I've got my satin. This is going to go on the inside so that it has a nice shiny finish. And then I have this material, which is sort of like a faux suede, and I'm going to use this just on the front. I don't have much of it, so I'm going to need to make sure I cut it out precisely. I then also made my own fabric with some of the spare calico that I had, and all I did was paint gold over this. As I say, the calico takes the colour very well, and it's a little bit stiff, but it should work absolutely fine after a good iron. To get these stars in the back, I'm going to use this fabric. Right now, it's time to cut this out. First, you want to lay down your pattern. Then just add some weights. Here I've used just some standard coins, and then using some chalk, I'm just going to draw around it. When that's done, just remove the weights, and there you go. When drawing out your pattern, remember to draw and cut in the corners, as these will be used to join up different pieces of your pattern together. Some basic tips for when you're cutting out. Make sure that your scissors are always super sharp. These are specific cutting scissors, which means that the blades can only be used in fabric, but they are extra sharp. So get a good pair of scissors. If you feel more comfortable keeping your fabric secure, you can always just pin it in place, and that way it won't move as much. And the final thing to remember is that you need to reverse your pattern. If your material has 2 different textures, like here, flip the fabric, otherwise you'll be cutting out the same pattern on both sides. Let's get cutting. I also find it easier to tidy up as I go along to reduce mess, and also remember to take your pins out your fabric before throwing it away. I find a list is also really helpful for keeping track of all the pieces I've already cut out. My friend Brian helped design the W, which is also on the Wiseacres shop. I then traced this, painted it, and then traced around it again, so I could use it later on. So once all your pieces are cut out and you're ready to go, the next step is to use interfacing. Now interfacing comes in lots of different thicknesses, so this one is quite thin. We've got a medium one here, and then this one is very, very thick. And these all iron on. You can also get an easy sew-in one. I prefer iron on because it's just much, much quicker. For most of my projects, I use sort of a quite thick or medium, but it's completely up to you. It can be good to buy a cheaper fabric and then apply one of these to make it more durable, and it also makes it easier to run through the sewing machine. So as I said before, these are all iron on, so I'm going to be ironing them on to all my pattern pieces. And you need to make sure that you always iron onto the reverse, so the bit that you can't see, because obviously you don't want to ruin the nice side of the fabric. Remove the steam, as you only need heat for this, and begin ironing. Then it's time to cut everything out again. Now, although these bits may look a bit like rubbish, interfacing is really good because you can cut out any shapes and you can just stick it alongside each other. So it doesn't have to be in one sheet, you could just stick these 2 bits perfectly together and they will do the same thing. It's also very good that you can layer thinner layers to make a thicker layer, so keep that in mind. If you do happen to buy the wrong type, you can just layer it up together and get a much thicker backing. The next step was to cut out my template stars and then draw them in chalk. I then used some small scissors just to cut the insides so that the gold would show through, and I then pinned them all into place before I began sewing. I felt that the collar was a bit bland, so I decided to cut out a moon stencil and using some leftover enamel paint to just paint them on. I really love the final look, and I think it complements the stars on the back of the design really well. Now all your materials are prepared and your pieces are cut out, it's time to start sewing. Now before I do begin sewing, I always check the instructions. Always have a read through of these. I tend to read through 2 or 3 times so I can kind of get my head around what it is you're making and the order and the steps in which you go about making it, and then I start laying out the pieces and get going. First off, we need to create some bobbins, which is done on every sewing machine, just like this, and it's a really simple process. Here we go, here's 2 colours, and that just fits into the bobbin case. You pull the thread through and it fits into the bottom. Next up is the top thread, and this can be slightly different for every machine, so check your manual. There are also lots of YouTube tutorials, so you can check your own machine and there will be lots of videos for you to watch. Then it was time to begin sewing the stars, and I'm just going to sew round the outside. Remember as well to put your foot down, as otherwise you can't sew without it. Once I had finished, I thought that the stars looked a bit boring, so I decided to go around them again. Cotton thread in gold. This is the stitch that I went with, and I think they turned out much better, and they have much more of a bold look. I then went round the W in a zigzag stitch with the same gold thread, and I really loved how it turned out. The next step was to add darts into the fabric. Darts basically take up excess fabric so it fits your body much closer and gives you a much nicer fit. Everything is on your pattern, so you just use the holes to draw the darts out, join them up, and then you can sew them. It's good to use a pin so that you can match up all the holes on both sides of your fabric, and this ensures that you are sewing correctly. They're very easy to sew, just in a straight line, and as you can see, they really make a big difference to the fabric. Now time to do the second one. And look at that finish. Up next is the welt pockets. These took me a little while to understand, but after reading through the instructions a couple of times and experimenting, I've got the hang of them. Just make sure to refer back to your pattern regularly. Next step is to cut away the excess and then sew over this. Once we've got that, we use a unpicker and we use this to cut through all the layers of fabric. We then push the pocket inside out, sew these together, and there we have it. This is your welt pocket, and you can store anything in there, and no one will know. We then move on to sewing the collar together, which was very, very simple, just going around the perimeter of both pieces, and then we sew the 2 bits of fabric, which we used on the back with a buckle to tighten the waistcoat in at the waist.
Now all the parts are ready, we can just sew them all together and follow step by step the pattern. This one was super easy, and basically I just had to sew at the shoulders for the inside and the outside. I then joined the two pieces together and then folded them inside out so that they were all the right side. Then I did my least favourite bit, which is hemming, but I hemmed the bottom of the waistcoat. All that was left then was to sew the inside edges together. I then went over this again with a zigzag stitch, and as you can see, this gives it a much stronger finish. And the last step was just to add these buttons, which I already had, trim away the excess threads, and finally give it a good iron. And here's the finished look. I added a gold shirt and also a complementary bow tie in the same fabric as the front of my waistcoat.
So that's it, we've come to the end of the video. As you can see, I have finished. And overall, I'm extremely happy with this. This waistcoat pattern fits me really well, so the process is quite easy. And I've made little changes such as the collar, which I've made myself, and it's really easy to do. All you really have to do is experiment and have a lot of fun with it. And that's what cosplay is all about, just having fun, creating a character, and then getting the end result. Now, I hope you've really enjoyed this video. As I said before, if you have any questions, let me know, send me a comment below, or send me a direct message on Twitter or Instagram, and I will try and get back with you as much help as I can give you, because there is a lot to learn with cosplay and I'm still learning myself. Thank you so much for watching. I've had a lot of really good feedback on my videos recently, and I cannot wait to make more for you. As ever, give us a big thumbs up, comment below your ideas of this cosplay. I'd love to know any cosplays that you've done, and also if there's any cosplays you would love to do in the future, or any ideas you think I should take on board, and then hopefully I can make some more. As ever, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Until then, stay safe, stay magical, and all the best. Bye!